What's up, everyone? It's Adar coming at you with another episode of Startup Engineering Daily. Let's hop right into it. So our first story is from Cursor announcing some performance improvements they made specifically for indexing large code bases. They have this blog post that talks about using semantic search and essentially how they're using Merkle trees to index large code bases using hashing to kind of compare diffs and update indexes whenever needed, and also being able to share indexes across team members because they said about 92% of code is shared across all teammates, so they can kind of reuse these indexes and do these like vector search checks to see which index already exists when a new teammate clones a repo inside of Cursor. It's pretty cool for a few reasons. One is that they're doing this kind of low-level computer science research and chats again, which is really cool. Seeing them use these data structures like Merkle trees and hashing and all that stuff kind of leads back to like why we should still be doing leak code, why we should understand these ideas. Because if you're going to ask Claude straight up, how would you improve indexing files? I wonder if that's the first thing it would say. There was a blog post that talks about how Dropbox and Cursor kind of have similar setups, and Dropbox is kind of very innovative on building these high-level semantic search systems and also comparing hashes and diffs across large file sets. But it's pretty cool, and it speaks to also the fact that they're not just using grep on code bases anymore. They are going to semantic search. They are using like ideas to search through vector space as opposed to just searching for specific strings in files, even though that's what I thought they were doing for a long time. So pretty cool. Check out the blog if you're interested. Next, we have an update from Vercel developers announcing NPX skills at 1.1.1. They're saying it has new human and agent-friendly discovery features and is now open source. I wonder what that means. I wonder if it was open source before. It is MIT licensed, so feel free to clone it and do whatever you want. It is interesting because they still have like these NPX skills find and NPX skills update. I kind of said myself that it is a bit strange that we're just doing like these GitHub clones to copy skills over as opposed to making it like a cloud system where you can update them automatically, you can share them more easily or like real-time work on them. But I think that will be coming in the future, but nonetheless cool to see that they're open sourcing this and adding updates. Next, we have another announcement from Vercel developers where they're releasing their Vercel React Native Skills skill for Claude and for other agents, and you can add it via Vercel Lab/agent skills. They hired Fernando, who created Solido, which is essentially a way to use Next.js with React Native. I think he's been working there for about 6 months now, and it's cool that they're kind of getting into the React Native world. And they have announced that they have an upcoming Vercel app with, I guess, domains is going to be the main piece, which I don't know why they're so invested in the domain purchasing, but I'm not mad at it. I guess it's kind of like a vendor lock kind of situation. But you can see here they have a demo of their React Native app, and they have new skills that they extracted, I guess, from building V0 for iOS as well. So check it out. And then one more update from the Vercel developers account is that the Vercel CLI now has a new API command for direct terminal access to Vercel APIs, which is very cool. So you can do like Vercel API/v2/user, for example. This is very similar to the GitHub CLI, which can also make API requests. So it can do a bunch of crazy things like mark conversations as resolved or just reply to conversations in general. And this is clearly going to be one of the pieces that will separate the agentic available services from the not agentic available services, because I just saw a tweet, for example, where a bunch of people are moving off of Zendesk because they essentially don't have an open API, so you can't actually use it with agents, and it just makes it useless, and that's what makes people want to vibe code their SaaS competitors. Whereas if you have a system like GHCLI or you have Vercel API, everything can be done through the agents, even deployments, etc., which you could already do through the Vercel CLI, but I'm sure there's some commands that weren't available, whereas now you can access everything that they have available through the API, and the agents just can work fully autonomously. Next, we have a tweet from Ej, I guess is how you say his name. I really have no idea, but he works at XAI. And there's a reply from Malte, who is the CTO of Vercel. And Ej says that, my guess is that the next agentic construct will be conformance, aka precompile checks. This was widely used at Google, static analysis, and I believe Cramforce made it available on Vercel, but I think it still lacks for agentic workflows. And Malte says, yes, they're thinking deeply about this. This is quite interesting because it speaks to the new wave of like, if you're going to do PR review for code, how can you guarantee that it speaks to the new wave of if you're going to have AI write all of the code, how can we guarantee before we merge it that it's not going to break? So you have pieces like TypeScript, you have ESLint, you have tests, you can check all these things. We don't quite have the like open up a browser and record yet, but we do have the open up a browser and take a screenshot. But this does speak to like why Rust is so popular and all of these things, where it's kind of like if it compiles, you know, at least it's not going to have a memory issue or crash. Whereas like with JavaScript, you can compile and have accessing properties from undefined or all these different problems. Same with Python or any other untyped language that doesn't strictly enforce it. But as we move forward into this age of AI, it will be interesting to see which programming language kind of take over, become available, or if we're even going to do like, or if we're going to do static analysis on TypeScript even more deeply. Could be very interesting, but this is definitely the way we're going, is like, how can we prove that the code works before merging it, before runtime? And static analysis is the way to do that compared to compiled runtime integration tests, for example. Next, we have a cool one. It doesn't really pertain to the work that I do, but Anduril is announcing that they're doing an AI Grand Prix with fully autonomous drone racing. There's going to be no human pilots, no hardware mods. Everyone's going to be using these drones, I guess, from a company called Neros Tech. And if you win, you can get $500,000 and a job at Anduril. That might be the prize. I'm not sure if that goes to first place or if that's just the prize pool, but it is really interesting to see. Definitely something to keep an eye on. And if you're into autonomous drone racing, this is your chance to get a job and prove your worth. Next, we have an announcement from Turborepo. I guess they've just launched version 2.8, and they say it's the build system for agentic coding, and it includes shared local caching for Git work trees. They also added their own Turborepo skill, and the docs now have AI chat, markdown responses, Turbo doc sub command, and more. This is cool. I know a lot of people are using Turborepo for new projects. I used it for one of them, and it's interesting. I know people run into some bugs still. It's not fully perfect, but in terms of like monorepos and having like a shared Claude.md and shared skills and all these things, monorepos are just becoming more and more popular. People don't really want to separate things out. They just want to have it all together, be able to clone it, be able to build binaries, etc. You do have to manage the build and making sure that when bundling, you're not adding extra code that's unnecessary, but it is making waves even more than it has before. I forget what the other company they were competing with was, but Turborepo has fully taken over. Kind of those things, when you get acquired by Vercel, it just gives you another foot on the pedal. But if you're using it, you can update and get access to all of these new benefits, including the caching. And last, we have a tweet from Rahul, who is head of applied AI at Ramp, saying they're getting a ton of questions on Ramp Inspect, and they essentially just released a full diagram showing how Ramp Inspect works, which is their internal agent. I don't think it's available externally, but you could essentially recreate it based on this. So I'm not going to open this up too deeply, but essentially you can see here the red box is external services, so that's Slack, GitHub, etc. This green box is called Modal, which is, I guess, at modal.com, essentially like a GPU service that you can use to host AI and all this stuff. And within that, they're using VNC for screen sharing and screenshots. Then they're using OpenCode for the TUI and being able to make commands, I guess, and sending through prompts. They also have a little piece for VS Code and this project called Runner. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I'm sure some of you are aware. Then they have this blue front-end React and this purple modal backend. And then this orange piece is just Cloudflare workers with a D1 database here in the corner. So if you're interested, check out the tweet and you can look into the architecture more deeply. If this kind of stuff interests you and you want to talk with some like-minded people, join the Audinato Discord in the description. Thanks.